The screen flickered to life, casting a pale glow across Detective Clara Reed's exhausted face. She leaned closer, her fingers gripping the edge of the desk, as she rewound the footage for what felt like the 100th time. The police station's evidence room was silent, save for the hum of the old monitor and the occasional shuffle of papers. Clara's alibi hinged on this tape, proof that she'd been asleep in her apartment the night Detective Ramirez was murdered. The timestamp was clear: 20:14 a.m. Her bedroom, her motionless form curled under the blankets. The perfect, unshakable alibi. But something was wrong. Her eyes caught it again, a faint blur in the corner of the frame, just beyond the edge of her bed. At first, she'd dismissed it as a trick of the light or a glitch in the recording, but now she couldn't unsee it. The blur moved, not like a person, not like anything natural. It slithered, a shadow stretching and contorting in ways that defied logic, creeping closer to her sleeping form. Her breath hitched. Had it been there the whole time? She paused the tape, zooming in. The image pixelated, but the shape remained, darker than the rest of the room. A smear of blackness that seemed to stare back at her. A chill snaked down her spine. She'd been alone that night. At least, she'd thought so. The surveillance footage was supposed to clear her name. Instead, it had unearthed something far worse. Something that had been watching her sleep. Something that shouldn't exist. And now it was watching her watch it. Clara sat alone in the dim glow of her computer screen, rewinding the security footage for what felt like the 100th time. The timestamp proved she was asleep in her bed when the murder occurred, but her relief was short-lived. Every few minutes, a flicker of distortion crept into the frame. A dark smear against the wall, shifting when nothing else moved. At first, she blamed it on poor lighting or a glitch in the system. But the more she watched, the more certain she became something was in the room with her. She brought it to Mark Harris, her partner, hoping for validation. Instead, he smirked and nudged her shoulder. "You've been staring at screens too long, Reed. It's just compression artifacts. Nothing supernatural about pixels acting up." His dismissiveness only fueled her frustration. She played the clip again, pausing where the shadow elongated unnaturally, stretching toward the bed. Mark shrugged. "See, just a blur. You're letting the case get to you." But Clara couldn't let it go. Late that night, she rewatched the footage alone, the office silent except for the hum of the computer. This time, she noticed something new. The distortion didn't just move, it paused, as if sensing her gaze. A chill crawled up her spine. She zoomed in, adjusting the contrast, and gasped. For a fraction of a second, the shadow took shape. A hunched figure, its head tilting toward the camera. Her hands trembled as she saved a copy. Whatever this was, it wasn't a glitch. And it was watching her back. Clara sat hunched over her desk, the blue glow of the monitor casting eerie shadows across her exhausted face. The footage played on a loop, her own sleeping form, the timestamp irrefutable proof of her innocence. But her eyes weren't on herself. They were locked onto the shifting darkness in the corner of the screen, the one that shouldn't be there, the one that moved when nothing else did. It started as a whisper, so soft she almost mistook it for the hum of her computer. But then it came again, a faint, garbled murmur just beyond comprehension. Clara's breath hitched. She leaned closer, ears straining. The voice, if it even was a voice, sounded wrong, like words spoken underwater or through layers of static. Her fingers trembled as she rewound the footage. The shadowy figure, barely more than a smudge before, now seemed to ripple, its edges sharper. It turned its head, slowly, unnaturally, and for a heartbeat, Clara swore it was looking at her. Through the screen, at her, the whispers grew louder, overlapping now, a chorus of hushed, desperate voices. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, pleading, angry, afraid. Her stomach twisted. The room felt colder, the air thicker, as if the darkness beyond the monitor was bleeding into her office. She jerked back when the shadow suddenly lurched forward, its form distorting like smoke caught in a sudden draft. The whispers rose to a crescendo, filling her skull, and for a single, paralyzing moment, the figure's face became clear. A hollow, gaping maw where features should have been. Then the screen flickered. The whispers cut off. The shadow was gone. But Clara knew it wasn't over. It was watching, waiting, and now, it knew she could see it too. Clara sat hunched over her desk, the dim glow of the computer screen casting eerie shadows across her tired face. Her fingers tapped impatiently against the keyboard as she rewound the footage for what felt like the 100th time. The timestamp showed the exact moment the murder had occurred, 3:17 a.m., but Clara was nowhere near the crime scene. She was asleep in her own bed, her form motionless under the blankets. The footage was her alibi, her only proof of innocence. But something was wrong. As the video played, a flicker caught her eye. A shadow moved unnaturally across the wall behind her sleeping figure, slinking like ink spilled in reverse. Clara's breath hitched. She rewound, played it again. The shadow was still there, but this time the screen glitched, a split-second distortion as if the video had skipped. She froze. That hadn't happened before. Her hands trembled as she isolated the frame. The timestamp jumped from 3D 1658 to 3D 1700. 2 seconds were missing. 2 seconds that should have shown the shadow's full movement. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. She knew glitches happened, but this felt intentional, as if something had reached out and plucked those frames from existence. Then she noticed something worse. The shadow in the remaining frames wasn't just moving. It was watching her. Its elongated form tilted slightly, as though turning to face the camera. To face her. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps. The entity wasn't just in the footage. It was interacting with it. A cold realization settled over her. The evidence wasn't just proving her innocence. It was a lure. And whatever was in that tape knew she was watching. Clara sat alone in the dim glow of her computer screen, the flickering footage playing on a loop. The shadowy figure in the background seemed to twitch every time she paused the video, as if aware of her scrutiny. Exhausted, she rubbed her eyes and caught her reflection in the dark monitor. But it wasn't just her face staring back. Behind her, the shadows in the room shifted, coalescing into a gaunt, familiar figure. Clara's breath hitched. It was the victim, their hollow eyes locking onto hers through the glass. The reflection's lips moved soundlessly, then a whisper slithered into her ear. "You know what happened." Clara recoiled, knocking over her coffee mug. The liquid spread across the desk like blood, but she couldn't look away from the mirror. The victim's face twisted in anguish, their skeletal fingers pressing against the glass from the other side. "Why won't you admit it?" The voice was louder now, dripping with accusation. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. She had seen the victim's file, heard the rumors of their obsession with the paranormal, but she'd never believed it until now. The reflection lunged forward, its hand bursting through the mirror. Clara screamed and stumbled back, but the glass remained unbroken. The figure was gone, leaving only her own pale, terrified face. Yet the whispers lingered, threading through the air like smoke. She glanced back at the footage. The shadow in the video wasn't just moving, it was watching her. And now, so was the dead. Clara's hands trembled as she sifted through the victim's personal belongings, scattered across the dimly lit desk in the precinct's evidence room. The case files were mundane at first glance, routine notes, witness statements, and photographs of the crime scene. But then she found a crumpled journal tucked beneath a stack of paperwork. The victim's handwriting was frantic, almost desperate, detailing strange occurrences in their home. Footage glitching, shadows moving on their own, whispers in the dead of night. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The descriptions mirrored her own nightmares. Flipping through the pages, she pieced together the truth. The victim hadn't been randomly targeted. They had been hunting the entity, documenting its movements, trying to understand its origins. The final entry was a warning: it sees through the screens. "It's using them to find us." Clara's stomach twisted. The security footage hadn't been her alibi. It had been the ghost's way of luring her in. The victim had stumbled onto something far darker, and now it was coming for her too. She rushed back to her desk, pulling up the footage once more. This time she watched with fresh eyes. The distortions weren't errors, they were deliberate. The shadow wasn't just appearing, it was watching her, studying her reactions. The whispers she'd heard weren't random noise. They were the victim's voice, trying to warn her. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears as realization dawned. She wasn't the investigator anymore. She was the next target. The screen flickered. The shadow's form solidified, its hollow eyes locking onto hers. Clara recoiled as the victim's face materialized in the static, mouth twisted in a silent scream. "You were never innocent," the ghost's voice hissed through the speakers. "You were chosen." The screen went black. Clara stared into the void, knowing she was already out of time. The footage flickered one last time before freezing entirely. Clara's face twisted in a silent scream. Her fingers clawed at the edges of the screen, as if trying to dig her way out, her nails leaving faint scratches on the glass. The shadow loomed behind her, its form no longer a blur but a solid, grotesque shape. Humanoid, yet impossibly wrong. Its elongated fingers curled around her wrists, yanking her backward with a force that defied logic. The room on the screen remained still, eerily untouched, as if nothing had happened. But Clara was gone. Vanished into the digital static between frames. The timestamp continued to count forward, the only proof that time was still passing. Detective Mark Harris would later review the footage, puzzling over the abrupt end to the recording. He'd see Clara's absence, note the timestamp, and assume the camera had malfunctioned. The thought of something supernatural never crossed his mind, it never did. The case would close, dismissed as another unsolved mystery. Behind him, unnoticed, the screen flickered once more. A shadow shifted in the corner, a brief distortion in the image. A whisper, barely audible, hissed from the speakers, just 2 words, repeated like a curse: "Your turn." The screen went black.